Radio check, anybody copy? Hello, everyone. I'm Alice Kuniklin, and this is part 1 of episode 13, Alaska Native Men's Health and Wellness on Coffee and Clock. Coffee and Clock is a podcast I created to celebrate and explore contemporary Native life in urban Alaska. This episode features basketball star turned community health advocate Damen Bell-Holter from Haida, Alaska. Like many other Native children, Damen developed a love for basketball at a young age. After years of practice and competing, he became the first Alaska Native to play in an NBA basketball game. Now, Damen dedicates his time working with Native youth and community development for Sea Alaska Corporation. I first met Damen all the way back in high school, but only reconnected with him again recently during the Social Justice Summit hosted by First Alaskans Institute that was held in Juneau in 2018. I sat down with Damen to talk with him about identity and culture, historical trauma, and his work around men's healing circles.
That's the hard thing is like men we're driven by ego. But our ego is driven by how much value do we feel like we're worth. And that's by us doing the things that we're naturally want to do, providing for our kids, taking care of our children, taking care of our loved ones, looking after our community. If we're constantly told that we're worthy of doing those things and those things are communicated with everybody and not, like I said, not coming from a place of you can do this and this, it has to be a normalized conversation. I think that's the biggest thing. It has to be a normalized conversation and finding ways to communicate with men in a healthy manner and they need to be told that, they're worthy and they're valued, and they're worth healing.
Rapid fire questions. Ready?
Yeah.
Coffee or clock?
Clock.
Apple or Android?
Apple.
Sunny and windy or overcast and warm?
Ooh, overcast and warm.
Four-wheeling or snow machining?
Snow machining.
Tang or Kool-Aid?
Growing up, Tang. I don't eat that. I don't drink all that no
more. Blueberries or salmon berries?
Salmon berries.
Okay, last one. Caribou or salmon?
Ooh, salmon.
All right.
Every day takes some work.
Can you kind of introduce yourself and then maybe just get into a little bit of how you got into this, because it's a different story.
So my name is Damen Bellholter. My Haida name is Damen Nanggaahlaangstangs, which means big enough to hold two souls. And I started to realize the work that I needed to do as soon as I had basketball, and when I was finished with basketball, I really had a lot of free time on my hands because I left home when I was 14 years old. Everything I describe right now is kind of my why. Growing up in Heidelberg, I left when I was 14, and I based my value off being a good basketball player, which in the majority of our community is like, hey, you're from Barrow. You guys have some of the best basketball players of a Native community in Alaska, right? So that was the same thing in Heidelberg. We had a bunch of guys, like I could count on two hands, coming from a town of 300 people that should have played collegiate basketball. So I would see all these examples, and I was learning slowly but surely learning from a lot of these poor examples, and they weren't terrible guys at the end of the day. They were just, doing the best with what they had dealt to them, right? As far as following examples, as far as, just being a basketball player. So, when I left, I just decided that, okay, I'm going to pursue this dream of basketball, and I'm just going to devote all of my time, every amount of my being to it. And what happened was I found my suppressor. I found something that distracted me full time from actually having to acknowledge the fact that all of these terrible things that happened to me in Heidelberg, everything from being, like I said before, being called every single day from the time I'm in third grade to the time I know how to defend myself, and that's being called from seniors who are in high school. I'm being a little kid being called these things, right? So my need for identity I was always struggling at school because I felt, I'm the only black kid in a community of, 300, and it's a Haida community.
You were the only black
kid? Or actually another Haida woman, she had kids with a black man, and they had 2 kids, right? So there's 3 of us. Wow. But they were way older than me, so they were in high school. Like, they, you know what I mean? So we weren't bunched in. Yeah. So, and on top of that, my brother and sister, their dad is Tlingit and white. So my little brother, dirty blonde hair, little sister, red hair, screaming red hair. So, like, as you can imagine all those questions, imagine all those comments that people would say, like, I'm adopted, I'm not from here. So the more and more, I look back on my journey, I said, okay, like, I'm not the only one, not even close. I'm just incredibly fortunate enough that I had basketball to distract me for 13 years, literally. It was 13 years that I had basketball to distract me. In the midst of it distracting me, I picked up all these bad habits because I was used to being the best of the best, right? Being acknowledged and recognized just because I'm good at a game. And especially, as you know, in our native communities, when you're good at basketball, like, you're a big deal. Yeah. So being worshipped in that way, and that's happened to a lot of our village kids who are good athletes. They get worshipped for so long. A lot of our men, I know a lot of really, really good athletes, male athletes who should have went in college, but they didn't have all the right disciplines, right? So that's what I started to realize, like, a long time ago. Okay, I was like, what's the deal with all these men, first and foremost, who are, like, reaching expectations? What's going on there? And then I was able to more and more, I traveled and would meet people and interact with people. I was, okay, there's a lot of abuse that has happened to a lot of our men. Like, I think about the more and more I traveled, I started to, like, flip over all these rocks of, like, the things that I was like, man, like, I remember it happened to me, but that just felt like it was just so normal, right? Being able to see these things, like, with my friends to all the things we talked about, like, all those things were normalized. Seeing our quote-unquote role models, their girlfriends walking around with black eyes. Ah, damn, she got beat up again. No big, we didn't, like, but something, there was a back in my mind is always like, okay, that's not normal, So, like, that was my why, was like, I saw the need, and the more I started doing the research, I started looking around the country. Are there any trauma-informed, like, male work out there? Are there conferences out there? Is there anything? And then I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, let me start small. Let me try to find out who are the good men, who's doing circles, Lyle Jameses, the Warrens, who could I find out who's doing this? Then I start checking around. There's like, man, there's no really programming out there for this. So I was like, okay, about a year and a half ago, I said, okay, I'm just going to start doing boys circles and men's circles in every single community I visit. I have a unique opportunity that I've interacted with over 10,000 youth in the last year, easily, or more.
Wow.
There's no how-to on breaking down the barriers for young men who have faced trauma their whole entire lives. From what I know, okay, you could go look up all these studies and stuff, but there's no how-to on how to engage with them, how to interact with them, and I'm able to do that. So that's what I said was, okay, there's a lot of men out there who are way better than me. I'm not going to lie. There's a lot of men who have made a lot less mistakes than me. But at the end of the day, the first step is admitting that you've made mistakes. So that's what I decided, okay, I'm just going to admit I've made these mistakes. Criticism isn't tough for me. I've been a pro athlete. I've been a collegiate athlete. I've taken hard coaching Archie Young at Managcom High School. He laid into me when I was 14, 15 years old and planted all these seeds that really didn't start coming out until I was in my 20s. Then I was like, oh, okay. Like, that's why he was so hard on me, But, I just kind of realized, like, I have to do all this work, and I'm open to criticism. I'm open to having tough conversations. It doesn't make me uncomfortable, like I talked about before. Like, I enjoy jumping on the fires, like, because at the end of the day, someone has to do it. And there's so many people who would rather dance around the fire than jump on the fire and see how hot that thing is. You know what I mean? So my constant feeling was, okay, should I be doing this? Like, I haven't always respected women. I'm trying. I'm actively working on it. I'm down in Heidelberg the very first day. We have a group of 9, and it grows from 9 to 12. We had 9 little kids in there, like really young ones, because I said, hey, let's get all the boys, because they announced it at culture camp. So all the aunties started sending all the little boys, demanded they go, came up with me, right? It just tells you the bigger picture of what's going on right now was, okay, I had 9 little ones, right? Then 3 teenagers joined the next day. The day after that, a couple, like 5 more joined, and then this kid who had got a DV charge, the first thing I did was I approached him, and he sat there and said, okay, you're gonna tell everyone not to be like me. I'm like, no, you're going to come up to this circle and you're going to sit with us and you can talk whenever you feel like it, because everybody already knows what's going on with you. Everybody already knows it. And I told everybody when we were there, I was like, this is a safe space for us. Like, whatever we talk about here stays here. And he opened up. And then at the end of the day, I'm sitting there thinking about this kid. I'm like, a great personality, but he is also a kid whose dad died when he was 13. His brother was, I think, 11. And then he had to deal with all the repercussions. On top of that, beforehand, it was already abuse, right? And then there's even more traumatic things happened after that. So I'm looking at all of those things, and I'm like, man, like, he doesn't need to be told to go on. He doesn't need to be told to get out of here. He needs to be brought into a circle and felt like he's a part of something, and that's when he's more open to learning. Because, there's so much, you need to do this, you need to do that, and finger pointing rather than like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation on what do we need from one another, No, it's funny. I literally was just talking to someone up in the Aleutian Islands, and they called me, and they're saying, hey, I'm not even gonna lie, I know who you are. I've followed your basketball career forever, but I didn't know you did this, and this. Yeah. I'm like, okay, well, it's because I was doing it like undercover. Like when I first signed my Division I basketball letter of intent, my first train of thought was, how am I going to get the next one? I'm 18 thinking like that. My senior quote was, if all I'm remembered for is being a good basketball player, I've done nothing with my life. So I always knew, like I always tell people, I look back on the journey, I was like, I always knew that basketball was just going to be my vehicle, even though I was going to make all these mistakes and everything, but I always knew that this thing that I'm pretty good at, and it's going to create something for me. And then my freshman year, right after that, I did a camp back on Craig. Had 60 kids there, right? And then like 3 communities in Masset reached out over on Haida. Hey, come over here. Okay, went over there. Next summer, 10 communities, then 20. I never posted. I post pictures here and there, Instagram. People follow the journey, but no marketing, no this. I would just do things in villages, and people would hear about it. Damon's authentic. Because from the get-go, I was honest. From the get-go, I was like, hey, like, these are the things that have happened to me. Here's what's happening, and the more and more you tell your story, you're able to open up more, So that's what, I just made sure that people were always going to know, I'm like, basketball is cool and everything, but guess what? I could also do all this, and this, and that's what I enjoy, because I get that a lot of assumptions. So many people assume that, trust me, like, I'm not even exaggerating. I talk with my CEO. I talk with a lot of my mentors about this. 90% of my freaking work is just disarming people first. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So many people just assume, like, okay, he's this basketball player, things have probably been easy for him, probably didn't have to work for much, Trust me, I get it all the time. And at the end of the day, I love it, because then they have a conversation, and then they hear me, and then they see me, and then that's what I've always done. Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell everybody how good of a person I am or whatever. I'm just going to go do my work, and it'll speak for itself. So with the men's work, like, when we're in there, I'm asking them questions like, okay, we're talking about communication, right? We're sitting there talking about communication. What's inappropriate and appropriate communication? We're talking like, sending pictures, getting pictures. I'm like, there we go. I said, how many people in here know somebody who sent a pic? I put my hand up, and then they were like, yeah, the hands went up. So at the end of the day, I'm human, we're all human. I'd love to find a man who hasn't messed up along the lines, who hasn't disrespected women, even unintentionally. Mm-hmm. Right. So at the end of the day, we have to have these conversations and acknowledge these things, but say, okay, I see the problem. I'm going to actively work on it now.
It's like you're an active participant. You're not like, you're not like trying to save everyone. Nope. You're just there to lead, like, to open the discussion. Open
dialogues. Because what I do is I start it off and I make sure everyone introduces themselves, a little bit about themselves. So we kind of start, there's a similarity amongst this kid and that kid over there. And once you start